yoga it up. The last announcement says it starts at 7.
Hi friends, it's Kate, your friendly neighborhood yogini. I am going to check to make sure that I am broadcasting live, and then we are going to get started. Apologies for the little delay, but I wanted to make sure I had everything in order so that we can have a nice practice this evening. So just 1 second, and I'll be right back. All right, I see that we are online. So friends, I do not have a solid class plan for us tonight, which sometimes is the way that I like to roll, but be assured that whatever we do, it's going to be fine. It's going to be accessible. Today, I think I would like to do some standing poses just because it's quite chilly out. If you're like me, your house might be a little bit cold, might be a little damp. So I thought maybe some standing poses at the beginning would be nice to warm us up. And then we'll do some forward folding poses towards the end as we're seated so that we can bring all of this blustery, windy energy that spring brings us in and down. So I do have Sir Scoots here with me today. So those of you who have practiced with me before may be familiar with Scooter. He came to us from the Humane Society, which is normally how I do my cats on mats practices. And I am broadcasting to you live from my in-home studio. So with us being in our homes with our family members, just want to let you know there may be some noises that you hear, just normal living with other people kind of activity. So if there's anything that's super loud or noisy, I will make sure I let you know what it is so that you don't have to worry about me. The other thing I want to make sure that I always mention at the beginning of class is that all of my postures today, I'm going to do my best to make them accessible, but do know that including movement and breath, all of my cues are invitational. They are not obligations, okay? So choose something that works for you today, finding somewhere in the middle, maybe using one variation versus another, and staying in your own body and following your own breath is very important. It is more important than following along with me, being present with yourself. So just know that at any point, if you need a break, if you need to wander off, come back, you need to address a small child or an animal friend, that you are free to do that, okay? And I think other than that, the only other thing I like to remind people is that sometimes when we practice together, some strong emotions can come up. If that happens to you today, just take a moment when that happens and try to pay attention to what your body is doing. What is your physical reaction? What's happening with your breath? What's happening with your muscle body? And notice when those things are happening, and then try to just be present with them and stay with it as long as you need to. And then either find a coping mechanism to let it roll away, or see if it just fades on its own. Yoga is really brilliant for encouraging us to be present without attachment. So a lot of times when we get anxious or worked up, if we just allow ourselves the space to feel that emotion, that energy, it will pass on its own. So it's something that has been really useful to me in my yoga practice. So if that happens to you today, particularly because today's windy, you might feel a little anxious or agitated. Just notice if that's happening, but don't assign any value to it one way or another. Just let it be what it's going to be. All right. So all of that out of the way, we're going to get started. I'm very happy to be here. get some movement in my day. So for me, I am going to start out seated with my beginning meditation. So if you've practiced with me before, you know the drill. I'm actually going to adjust my mic here on the floor, so you might have a little bit of feedback as I do that. Apologies. You noticed it was tipped over. That way you might be able to hear me a little bit better. So got a new mat today, so it'll be nice and sticky. But whatever you have, wherever you are, even if you're just sitting on the carpet in your living room, we're here. We're going to spend the next hour breathing together, and it's going to be fine. All right. So I like to sit up on something. So whether you've got blocks, I have a bolster today because I want a little bit of a softer lift. So if you have pillows you want to stack up and sit on top of, that's fine. If you like to sit all the way down on the floor, that's fine too. If you're feeling particularly anxious, and I might actually change my mind and do this with you, if you're having a really blustery day, what sometimes can be very nice is taking either a bolster, or you've got a blanket you can roll up, some pillows you can stack up, and lay it down on your mat. We're actually going to lay face down. So this is just one of many options. If you like to sit up for your breathing and meditation, you can do that. If you want to lay on your back, you can do that as well. For me, laying down, face down is the right option for me today. So what I want to be able to do is have my bolster right underneath me. So mine comes about to my hips, but the top part is what's important here. I want it to end right underneath my shoulders so that I have breathing space here in front of me, that I can put my hands down and rest my forehead on my hands. So here we are laying face down on our mat, or wherever you are, seated. Maybe you're in a chair. Maybe you even like to take meditation standing. All those options are equally valid. You just want to find something that works for you. So you can continue to stay wherever you are. I am just going to sit up so that I can teach to you. But I wanted to show you that as a really fantastic option. If I were practicing for myself today, I would be laying face down the whole time. So if you are there, please stay there. I'm just going to sit up so you can hear me. So notice how your breath is moving today as we arrive on our mat. There was most likely a little bit of effort to get you here this evening, even if it just means getting you onto your living room floor, getting out your phone or whatever you're using to access the internet, maybe gathering your props. But now we're going to let all of that energy settle down. So notice if your breath is a little quick. I can tell mine is actually shuddering a little bit, which is not common for me, but it does happen. So if that's happening with you today, just notice it. I have a feeling mine comes from having a busy day, added to some of the energy of the weather outside. It just can make us feel a little off kilter. It's a transitional period in the weather, right? So many of us are also transitioning between phases in our lives. So if you find yourself in that space, a space of transition, now notice how it's affecting your body and your breath. So notice if you're holding tension in your body somewhere that maybe you can release. For me, it's always in my shoulders. They always have a way of creeping up on me, so I like to check in with them, See if they can drop down a little bit further. Notice if your breath is starting to slow down a little bit. Maybe you can even find a little bit more depth, length to your breath. And as your body softens and your breath softens, sometimes you can even notice your heartbeat. So for me today, even that has a little bit of wavering, of energy to it that it doesn't normally have. And I want you to pay attention to all these things that are happening, but try not to assign any value to them, like I mentioned earlier. If you hear that kind of knocking sound, just know that's some metal outside my house. Sometimes it knocks against the side when it's really windy, so try not to worry about that. But like I mentioned, we're not assigning good or bad values to the way our body is in this moment, our breath is in this moment. We're just noticing. Maybe at the end of class it'll be different. Maybe it'll be the same. Spending another couple of breaths here. Breathing all the way in, breathing all the way out. All right, so when you're ready, if you're laying down, you can slowly begin to work your way up to seated. We'll spend a couple breaths here trying to find some small movements. So we'll inhale, reach both arms up overhead, interlace the fingers, turn the palms face up. Find a big stretch across the back. And then we're going to take a big inhale, drop our hands over to the right, trying to keep both sits bones, so both points of your hip girdle down on whatever you happen to be sitting on. Inhale, come up. Exhale, over. Big breaths all the way in and all the way out. Goodness, it is so windy, you guys. Inhale up. Exhale over. I hope you're safe and warm at home. Inhale up. Exhale over. And then inhale up. We're going to shake the hands out. Get rid of some of this excess energy. So that's what part of our practice is going to be about today. It's getting rid of some of this excess energy so that then we can settle. So we're going to take the right hand, bring it over to the left knee. Take the left hand, bring it just behind us, and come into a soft spinal twist. So we're feeling our stomach coming back towards our spine, right? So this is kind of giving us a little bit of lift as we turn the chest. And just be mindful that you're not using your hands to crank your way into the twist. They're just being used to give us the slightest bit of support, maybe adding to the twist just the tiniest bit. Big breaths in and out. And then when you're ready, we'll inhale and release. Do the other side. So this time left hand comes to right knee and switching directions. So notice where you feel tightness in this pose and notice where you find space, a looseness, a softness. Both are equally important to notice, even though it's easier to notice where you have tension. One more big inhale and exhale here. All right, then we'll inhale and release. Roll through the shoulders. You know the drill by now if you've practiced with me. These are all movements I like to start with. They just kind of help me understand where my body is in space today, where I'm holding tension. So I start with the spine, check in with the shoulder girdle. We'll check in with the hips in just a moment. So we're going to move our bolster off to the side. If you happen to be sitting on something, get that out of the way. Then we're going to come into extended cat poses. So hands right underneath your shoulders, knees right underneath the hips, taking a big inhale, pressing the tops of the feet into your mat. Exhale, lift the middle of the spine straight up, drop your tailbone down towards the floor. And then inhale, feel the chest pulling between the arms, reaching towards the top of your mat. Exhaling, lifting, inhaling, opening, exhaling and lifting, inhaling and opening. Excellent. So from here, we're going to transition through downward facing dog and make our way to standing in a forward fold. So if you would like to skip downward facing dog, that's always an option for you. You can also stay on hands and knees and press back through one heel and then the other, like so. And then when you're ready, making your way up to a standing forward fold. For those of us who want to do a downward facing dog, we're going to find lots of space in between our fingers, pressing into all of the pads of our hand here, all the knuckles. We're going to turn under the toes behind us, shift the weight back just enough so that then you can load some weight into the balls of your feet and pick up the knees. And then slowly lift the heels, lift your butt back so that we can reach into downward facing dog. Take a couple breaths here. If you're just moving from one foot, pressing back from one foot into the other, just on one knee, that's perfectly fine. You can move with your breath or stay for a couple of breaths on one side and then the other. You want to find a stretch that feels comfortable for you. If you're seated or you're standing, you can press your hands into a wall in front of you and start dropping the chest down towards the floor. This is a really nice option. So either way, we're slowly making our way to a standing forward fold. So I'm walking my feet up towards my hands. And I'm bending my knees. So once you get to the top of your mat, bend your knees. Allow your chest to come down onto the thighs. So we're coming into a soft standing forward fold here. You can shake the head out, yes and no. Nice, easy, allowing the force of gravity to help you find some length in your spine. And the legs don't have to be straight. We're controlling how much of a hamstring stretch we get here by bending the legs. So you only need to go as far as you need to in order to feel some sort of stretch or sensation. And then when you feel ready, bend the knees even more deeply. Inhale, come all the way up. Hands pressed together overhead, and then exhale, coming through center. or mountain pose, Samasthiti. So I'm going to pull my hair up. We're going to move through some transitions. So I will try to make sure that we have everything accessible. If you want to, you can continue to sit in a chair and do some of these poses. Just find what works for you, all right? So I like to start with my toes touching and my heels slightly apart by about 1 inch. That's traditional in the way that I was taught, but if it's more comfortable for you to have your feet about hip width apart, that's totally fine too. So find something that works for you today. We're going to stand at the top of our mat, bend our knees, and pay attention to how our feet feel when they're in contact with the floor. If you have trouble with sensation in your feet, maybe focus on the sensation of your weight transitioning through the bend in the knees, or if you're seated, maybe how it feels as you're sitting on your chair. Just bring yourself into an awareness of contact with the floor, whatever way that works for you in your body. Big inhale here. Exhale, we're going to release the hands down. Inhale, they're going to come up overhead, press together, lift up, and focus on lifting the chest towards the ceiling. So not so much about going backwards, but lifting up. So we're going to lift up, maybe backwards the tiniest bit. Then exhale, come forwards, back into our forward fold. And from here, we're going to take the right foot, step it back, and we're going to keep it nice and high to start. So you can come up off of the pose a little bit, straighten the front leg if you need to. I like to have a horizontal distance in between my feet here, so I don't line them up. I want to have about, for me, it's my own hip width of distance. So it's, I don't know, 8 inches, something like that. And then from here, as long as I have my back leg relatively straight, doesn't have to be stick straight, then I can bend my front knee just enough until I start to feel a stretch through the front of my hip flexor. But what's important to me here is that both sets of toes pointing directly towards the top of my mat, and my pubic bone and tailbone, so my pelvic girdle, is straight up and down. So just as if, and you may be, sitting in a chair, right? So we have everything oriented nice and straight here. So then as we come down, it stays the same. So there's no tipping action. See that? We're staying up. So it's not necessarily coming with a lot of effort. We just only bend the front knee as much as we need to in order to feel a stretch through here. And if it's not very deep, like for me today, not super deep, then that's where we are. So you can keep your hands on your hips or hold on to something if you need extra balance. Take a moment here. And then we're going to transition. Bring the hands down. We're going to step back to downward facing dog. And we're going to do the other side. So if you're familiar with traditional yoga sequencing, this is called a C-series salutation. So it's a modified version. So then we're going to pick up the right foot, bring it up in between the hands, and keeping the back foot and the front foot both pointing towards the top of the mat, we're going to come up again. So here I am. I'm straightening out my front leg just a little bit. So I have some stability here, horizontal spacing in between my feet, making sure my left and right my hip bones are both parallel to the top of the mat, and my pubic bone and tailbone are oriented as if I were sitting in a chair. Okay? So then when I'm ready, I'm going to bend the front leg, and that hip is super tight, much tighter than I thought. So you can see I have maybe 6 inches of bend in my front knee today. So we're really focusing on bringing the front hip and reaching it straight back behind us. That's going to give us some stability in our pose. And again, like I said, we only go as far as we need to. So if you're feeling some heat, that is the goal. We're doing a little bit of quad straightening, butt strengthening, but what's key, what's really making us feel kind of hot is the back bending action through our hip behind us. All these little secrets. All right, so then when you're ready, we're going to take our hands, bring them down to the mat, If you'd like, you can transition back to downward facing dog or just step the back foot up to meet the front, and we're going to work our way back to a standing forward fold. So if you want to do downward facing dog, that's fine. If you're familiar with traditional vinyasas, so transitioning with movement and breath through traditional chaturanga, upward facing dog, downward facing dog sequence, you're welcome to do those too. It's all up to you and what your body is asking for today. So then from here, we're going to bend the knees deeply. Inhale, come all the way up. Hands above our head, lifting through the chest. Going into small standing back bend and then coming back to center. So we got some opening through the front hip already. So now we're going to take the back or the right leg, step it back. I like to pivot my feet. You can do whatever you want. We're going to do one side and then the other. So we opened up the front side of the hip flexor. Now we're going to open up more of the inside of the joint. So we're going to come into warrior two. All right. So I have my right foot in front, but it doesn't matter. Like I said, just pick one. I like to have heel to heel alignment. So if I'm on, imagine myself on a parking lot line, my feet are on the same line with their heels. Front toes pointing towards the short edge of my mat. Back toes pointing towards the long edge of my mat. So same concept here. We're keeping the hips level with the floor. At no point are they tipping. All right, so they're staying right where they are. I have about one of my own leg lengths in between my feet. Sometimes they creep out a little bit further once I get into the pose. So we're going to pay attention to our front knee as we bend it. I already know I'm going to need a little bit more space. So we bend it, it's going to come over our ankle, and you want to be able to see your big toe on the inside edge of your knee right here. So I need a little bit more space to get a nice stretch. So you can adjust your feet in and out as you feel fit in the pose. So again, same thing. Hips as if we were seated on a chair. If you're already on a chair, bonus, you get to keep this neutral with support and then find the legs where they need to be. So from here, once you get settled, we're going to inhale and open the arms and notice your shoulders. So sometimes they have a tendency to creep forwards towards the front leg. We want to keep them neutral. So I almost imagine somebody's got my fingers and they're pulling me backwards just a little bit. So take a couple breaths here. I know this is a lot of work in this pose, but it is one of my favorites. If you practice yoga, you'll eventually find a way to make this pose really sustainable. And an old teacher of mine used to say, you can use the bones to take the weight. And so what he meant was you can find the right alignment for your pose, the right alignment for your body. And then this posture feels almost effortless. So from here, we're going to take the front hand, turn the palm face up, and then reach it up towards the ceiling. So as the hand reaches up, our shoulder drops down, and we find length along the front line of the body here. So we're not necessarily doing anything with the shoulders. They're remaining parallel to the long edge of the mat. We're not necessarily crunching this back side of the body. This is not even necessarily a back bend. It is a lifting up and lengthening towards the ceiling. Then we'll inhale, come back to warrior two, just for a breath. And then we'll inhale, straighten the front leg. We're going to turn the toes so they both face forward towards the long edge of the mat. I'm going to grab a block just because I want a little bit of lift. So if you have a piece of furniture or you have something like a yoga prop available, that's fine. If you maybe have a stack of books from your most favorite public library, those would be perfect as well. So I'm going to take my block, keep it on the 9-inch height, so the tallest height. Set it down, keeping the toes turned towards the long edge of my mat and The outside edges of my feet are roughly parallel. So depending on the way that your feet are shaped, your toes might turn in a little bit. So from here, hands to hips, inhale, lift up through the chest. Exhale, bend the knees, come down. So my hands are down on my block. And we find length through the spine. So however you need to find support for your torso, whether it's using a block or a chair, it's just something, a desk maybe that you have access to. We want to feel some support through the torso. So again, your torso is light. Big inhales and exhales here. Then we're going to take our right hand, bring it right underneath us, so it's right underneath the chest. Left hand comes to the back of the pelvis. And then we're going to inhale, turn the chest towards the side. So we're not doing this motion with the shoulders. Let me tell you, that is a recipe for a cramp in your upper back. So we're taking the heart and turning it. You can feel this at the level of your belly button and up. And we're keeping the hips very still, so there's no movement or tilting there. Scooter is snoring. We may hear him. He might get really loud. He was loud yesterday. And then we'll relax back down. Do the other side. This time left hand right underneath us. Right hand to the back of the pelvis. And then turning the chest. Notice where you have areas that are tight, areas that have more space. I don't know if you can hear him. He's really getting going. And then we'll release, come back to center, bend the knees deeply. If you want, you can move your prop out of the way. Just going to move mine to the side. Then we'll bring our hands to our hips. Inhale, come up. We still got to do the other side. So this time, turning our left toes, or our right toes, or whatever side you didn't do before, to the top of the mat, and heel to heel alignment, okay? So again, I like to have a little bit of extra space in between my legs, but you want to find out where your body is tonight before you make that big adjustment. So again, from here, we're not tilting the pelvis, it's staying neutral. So none of this action. If you're familiar with triangle, there's a lot of tilting. That's not where we're going today. We're staying nice and stable. So you'll notice from here, my hips are the same as when I bend my front leg. They do not tilt. So I almost like to imagine I have a weight on this back hip, dropping it down towards the floor. And this is more anchored down towards the floor than my front one. That always helps me stay a little bit more stable. Shoulders are parallel to the long edge of the mat. And if you're comfortable, you can open the hands out to the side. And your gaze is soft off the top of your nose, down towards your fingers. One more big inhale and exhale here. And then when you're ready, you're going to take your front hand, turn it palm face up, and then reach it up towards the ceiling. So take note, sometimes that makes us want to come out of our front knee. So we deepen the bend in our front knee just a little bit and find length through the torso. Check in with your jaw, make sure you're not chewing on your pose. And your eyes are soft. And then from here, back to warrior two. And then we're going to take both arms, windmill them down. And if you're comfortable stepping back to downward facing dog, that's where we're going. You can always come down onto hands and knees and do those extended cat stretches that I mentioned earlier, right? That we did. These are really nice. Or if you're feeling super hot, super overwhelmed, you can even come all the way down into child's pose. Simple, soft pose. Hands can be extended in front of you or I personally like to bring them back by the feet, palms face up, and catch your breath. So whatever version of a, quote, restorative pose, after all that effort, you want to take, that is fine by me. All right, so we're going to do one more standing pose that's going to transition into a balance. So we're going to take I'm going to start with my right foot and bring it up behind the right hand. So you'll notice you have a horizontal space in between your feet again. So we're doing that high lunge that we did before. So again, however you want to get there is fine. We're transitioning to our high lunge pose. So both sets of toes pointing towards the front edge of the mat. Pelvis is neutral. We're going to bend the front knee coming into our high lunge pose. Now here's the trick this time. You can stay here working the pose, pressing the hands together. If you want to deepen the back bend, lifting them up towards the ceiling. Fabulous, fabulous way to work this pose. An option for a balance, if you'd like to explore that, is we're going to bring the hands to heart center, bend the front knee super deep, and slowly pour your weight into the front leg until the back leg gets really light. You can slowly pick up the toe. And now you'll notice as we move with the hips being neutral here, they slowly start to tip towards the floor. So we're one long line. If you imagine your face to your hip to your toes behind you, it's as if you could stand on the wall behind you. This is your frontal plane. Everything is parallel. This standing leg is the one that is out of place. So you can bring your hands to your thigh. To me, that's what I need to do today so that I can maintain some balance. You can put some blocks down if you want to do that, or maybe reach down to the floor or the seat of a chair, whatever you need to do. And then when you're ready, bending the standing leg even more deeply, reaching back with your toes. Ooh. And seeing if you can transition back to our high lunge pose. And then exhale, come all the way down and step back. If you're familiar with our vinyasa practice, you can do vinyasa. I'll show you one just for kicks. So moving through plank, coming down through chaturanga, inhaling up for upward facing dog, and exhaling back for downward facing dog. For those of us with lots of energy, it's kind of like an etch-a-sketch, but it does the same as coming in through a more restorative pose. So when you're ready, we're going to do the other side. So this time, left foot comes up behind the left hand. Whew, and we're coming all the way up. I'm hot. Are you hot? I'm roasting. So I'm keeping my sweater on so that I don't get super hot, because I do have a tendency to do that. Get really excited. So we're going to try and keep it simple. So again, here we are, high lunge, hips parallel and in neutral. And then when we're ready, bending the front knee. So we're coming into our high lunge. And then you can either choose to work the pose here, pressing the hands together, lifting them up, finding balance here, or for those more adventurous, we can slowly pour the weight into the front leg and transition into our standing balance. So this is warrior 3. So we just did warrior 2 before. This is warrior 3. So we're really focusing on keeping both hips parallel to the floor. So neither one is lifting up. I've got lots of micro adjustments happening in my ankle today, which means my balance is a little wonky, but that's very normal when it's windy out. Sometimes we're just a little off kilter. So keep your gaze on one point on the floor. This will help you feel a little bit more stable. And when you're ready, bend into the standing leg deeply. Reach back with your toes. Try to come down softly. Press the hands together. Lift up. And then exhale, come all the way down. Ooh, I'm super wiggly. Onto our hands and step back. And either move through vinyasa or stay in your downward facing dog. Or if that was really tough, you're feeling really hot like me, maybe we come all the way down. Into child's pose. So choose what's right for you. And maybe you don't know. So maybe you just make an educated guess, trying to figure out what you need. Big inhales, big exhales. I'm sure you can hear I'm taking big breaths, trying to smooth out the edges. If you're in child's pose, it can be really nice to take the knees wide because then you have space, your chest and your belly to expand, unhindered for the breath. And wherever you are, if you're not already in child's pose, let's come down, spend a couple breaths here together in this pose. Big inhales, big exhales. Feeling the backside of the body expand, particularly through the area of the low back where the kidneys are. One more big inhale here. All right. So then from here, we're going to inhale, come all the way up to seated. My goodness. And we're going to transition into our forward folds. So remember, I said we're going to work up some heat and we're going to come all the way down. If you haven't noticed, I would like you to take a moment and observe how cute my cat is. So that's Scooter. He's our old man. We are going to come into head to knee pose, Janu Sirsasana in Sanskrit, which is the traditional language of yoga. So I'm going to extend through my right leg and take my left leg, sole of my left foot, and bring it to the inside edge of my right thigh. So now as you do this, you might notice your hips kind of skew off to the side a little bit here. If it's hard for you to sit on the floor with this leg extended, I recommend putting a little bit of lift underneath your hips, whether that's the edge of a folded blanket, or maybe you even need a block. Please feel free to do that so that this pose is not excruciating for you. If this knee floats, like mine, you can take, again, either the edge of a blanket, or for me, let's see how high this is floating today. Yeah, I'm gonna need a little bit of a block underneath here. So we're gonna give ourselves some support. Now, hips are off kilter a little bit, but we're gonna take the shoulders and turn them parallel to the plane of our foot here. So you'll notice there's a little bit of a spinal twist between the shoulders going one way and the hips going another, right? So that from here, we're gonna focus on bringing our left shoulder down to our right foot. So big inhale, reaching up with both arms. Exhale, come forwards into your forward fold. So notice where you're feeling the stretch in this pose. So for some of us, you might feel this all in the extended leg. You might feel it in your low back. For me, that's where I feel it on this side of my pose. Maybe you feel it on the outside edge of your hip flexor here. There's lots of different places. Maybe you feel it somewhere else entirely. Taking a few breaths here, allowing all of our work to fade away. And then when you're ready, we'll inhale and come up. We're going to switch sides. So extending the left leg this time, bringing the right leg in. Same thing, if this knee floats, you're going to want to support it. You might notice I needed a whole block under one leg. In this one, my leg comes all the way down onto the floor. So if you're a little off kilter like me, you're in good company. So from here, again, shoulders turning to be parallel to the plane of our foot. We're going to inhale, reach up with both arms, and then exhale, come down, thinking about our right shoulder coming down to our foot this time. And again, noticing where you feel sensation in your body. And maybe you can name the kind of sensation you're feeling. And then let that name fade away and just be present with whatever is happening. Taking big inhales and exhales. Now we did start a little bit late today, so I'm going to go a little bit past 8 o'clock. But I want to make sure you wind down after all that big work we did. All right, then from here we're going to inhale, come all the way up. First, we're going to press the soles of our feet together, coming into cobbler pose. Some people know it as butterfly. Now, it's not as important here that we prop up our legs, but if this is really uncomfortable and you need to, feel free to do that. Again, same thing. If this is really uncomfortable because the feet are so lifted towards the face, believe it or not, in this pose, you can also sit up on something. So sit up on the edge of a blanket, on a block, whatever you need in order to make this comfortable and accessible for you. And we're going to sit up nice and tall, and for some of us, sitting up, dropping the pubic bone, the front of the pelvis down towards the floor, can be a lot of effort. So for those of us where this feels super engaging, we'll just stay here. And for those of us who maybe want a little bit more dialogue with our body, we're going to sit up nice and tall and then lift with the chest as we hinge forward, coming over our feet. And we want to think about lengthening the spine forwards as much as possible, more than coming down towards the floor. Big inhales, big exhales. And then when you're ready, we'll inhale and come up. One more seated forward fold for us. We're really bringing the energy down here. So we're going to come into a wide-legged forward fold. So again, here's where we want to make sure our pelvis is neutral towards the floor. So just as if you were sitting in a chair, that's how we want the hips here. So if you notice that you're dropping your tailbone and rolling the hips forwards, getting a little bit of a lift here, you're going to want to sit up on something, because that means that you're super tight through your hamstrings and you're not able to get the correct alignment. So we want to make sure our hips are neutral before we do anything else. So as we drop the pubic bone down, we're sitting up tall. And then if you would like, we're going to come into a forward fold. I have a bolster handy today, so what I'm going to do is put that in front of me. So if you have extra things in your home that you can put in front of you to support you, feel free to do that. So I have a little bit of a pillow waiting for me as I come forwards. You can prop it up as much as you need to, but we'll sit up nice and tall, reach the arms up, And then exhale, we're going to bring them down in front of us and slowly walk the hands forward. So I have lots of space, so I can come forward pretty quickly. But if you just need to come forward the tiniest bit in order to start feeling some sensation, that's where you want to be. You only need to go as far as you need to in order to feel that little bit of tension, the little bit of activity happening in the body, your neurons firing, okay? I always think those people are lucky because they get to find all of that dialogue with themselves without having to put their legs behind their head, right? So we'll take some big inhales, big exhales here. Trying to find some length through the spine. Check in with your toes and make sure they're pointing up towards the ceiling. So sometimes they have a tendency to roll in or out in this pose, and we want to try and keep them as neutral as possible. Couple more big breaths here. You know, this is an intense pose, but we're setting you up for a good night's sleep, all right? One more big inhale, big exhale. And then we'll inhale all the way up. I don't know about you, I could have stayed there all night. So if you can, without using your arms, try to bring your legs in so we can tighten up the muscles we just stretched. And we're slowly going to work our way all the way down. We're going to do a couple spinal twists, and then we're headed towards the finish line. So from here, we're going to hold on to our right leg and extend the left leg down towards the floor. You might be delighted to know that this pose is called wind relieving pose, which I always thought was an audacious name for a yoga pose. But what we're going to do is take our left hand, put it on our right knee, and draw the leg over across the midline. So we're trying to keep both shoulders down on the mat. So if you want to take your right hand and extend it out to the side if you have space, that's a wonderful thing to do. If you want to put a prop under your knee to catch it so it's not so heavy and pulling on your spine here, that's also a really nice pose. And then when you're ready, we'll inhale, come back through center. We're going to do the other side. So this time, pulling the left knee in, extending the right leg, coming back to our wind relieving pose. We're going to take our left knee and our right hand, extend the left arm out to the side, and then slowly come in for another spinal twist. Again, supporting this knee with a block underneath it or whatever else you might have in your vicinity. And then as you inhale, we'll come back to center. Give the legs a squeeze one more time. Now from here, we're going to hold on to our right knee again. Extend the left leg down, but put the sole of the left foot down on your mat. So we have Sole of the foot down. Now we're going to take the right leg, take the ankle, put it just above the left knee, and try to drop your right knee, pressing it down towards the bottom of your mat. So we're finding external rotation here in the right leg. So we're going to do what's called reclining figure 4. So if you imagine this is an upside down number 4, right? We just have our leg bent. So from here, we're going to take the sole of the right foot. We're going to drop this whole contraption over to the left. So as your left knee opens to the side, sole of the right foot is coming down towards the floor. Then from here, you can take the left hand and maybe press your leg away from you. I like to energetically draw my knee down towards the bottom of my mat, so opening this leg up, but I like to do it with just my muscle body. So both options available to you. Big inhales, big exhales. We're stretching out this muscle body here that we used for our standing balance. Didn't think I'd forget, did you? I'm not going to leave you hanging. And we'll inhale, draw the legs back to center, release your pose. We're going to do the other side. So this time, we're going to leave our right leg down. Right leg down, sole of the foot is still on the mat. We're going to take the left leg, cross the ankle over the knee, and drop the left knee out to the side. So again, if you're looking down, we have an upside down figure 4. Don't know what I'm talking about. I'll rotate just so you can see. See what I mean here? Upside down figure 4. So, wiggle my way back. So keeping the right foot down on the mat, we're going to drop the right knee out to the side. So the sole of the left foot is now going to come down towards the floor. And energetically, I'm imagining pressing my left knee down towards the bottom of my mat, opening up the rotation, feeling a big stretch through the upper outside edge of my left leg. Big inhales and exhales here. One more inhale. One more exhale. And then we're going to inhale, come back to center, release your pose. You can bring both legs in and give them a squeeze. I like to put my hands on my knees and roll in circles in one direction and then the other. And then we're going to come into Shavasana, our final resting pose. So you can choose whatever posture suits you best. If you'd like, you can always take traditional Shavasana, which is arms and legs extended, palms of the hands face up. I would recommend covering up today, particularly over the front of your hips. So if you have a blanket, you can just throw it over there. Lots of other options include putting a lift underneath the knees so that you have a little bit of softness to the knee joint, a little bit of softness to the hip joint. Or you can take Shavasana like we did at the beginning of class with whatever your lift is right behind your body. So either putting your lift down and laying back on it, which is really nice, has the added benefit of opening up across the chest. So if you still feel like it's a little hard to breathe, this might be really nice for you. Or like we did at the beginning, laying all the way down, face down, with some space here so that your chin can drop down and you can rest your forehead on your hands. So I'm going to lay face up just so that I can continue to give you some instructions as we move through our final pose. So do whatever you need to do in order to make yourself comfortable. That is the most important part of this pose. Finding something that's comfortable where you can relax. Okay? That means just sitting in a chair. That's fine too. But wherever you are, take a big inhale all the way in. Big exhale all the way out. Do that a couple times. And then allow yourself to come into a quiet, steady breath. So no effort or control, just allowing the breath to be what it is, like we were at the beginning of class. If you're comfortable, you can even close your eyes. And let all the effort from practice, all of your thoughts about it, all your opinions, let those all fade away. Resting here in your final pose. No more effort, no more shapes to make. Just give yourself permission to be here in this moment, in this place. Staying with your body, staying with your breath. If you find any areas of lingering tension, consciously try to direct your breath, your energy there, and see if you can release just a little bit more. And as we stay here in our silent, soft pose, we'll spend another 2 minutes just breathing and listening. So know that if you are at home, You are always welcome to stay here as long as you wish. But if you'd like to end with me, you can start to find some small movements in fingers and toes, wrist or ankle circles, a roll of the head or a stretch of the arms. Whatever helps you feel at home in your body. And then when you feel ready, you can slowly roll off to one side, taking your time, being mindful of any props or other items that might be around you. Take a moment here to feel the expansion of the breath on 3 sides of the body, and the support of the earth on the 4th. And then whenever you feel ready, we'll slowly work our way up to seated, allowing our blood pressure to come back to normal, reorienting ourselves to our body and the space that we're in. So we'll end class with 3 big breaths together. So if you'd like, you can press the hands together and then press your thumbs against your sternum just so you can feel the texture of your breath. So we'll take a big inhale all the way in. Exhale all the way out. Inhale all the way in. Exhale all the way out. Inhale all the way in. Exhale all the way out. So thank you very much for practicing with me today. Again, my name is Kate, if you don't remember, and I teach yoga for the library on occasion. We might have some other things in the works. But if you liked this class, the public library has other classes of mine that I have live streamed for them that you can find in a playlist. I think it's just called yoga. So if you hop over to their page, you can find more of me there. If you like practicing with me and you want to continue to practice with me digitally, you can find more about me on my page, which is Cats on Mats. So you can find me on Facebook, Cats on Mats. You can find me on Instagram. You can also find me on my website, which is catsonmatsyoga.com. And there you'll find links to the teaching that I do online. I teach at least twice a week. And I love doing it. It's a really great way to interact with students around the world, but certainly at least in our community where we might not always get to be practicing together in person. So I love it. I love the ability to connect online. So I want to say thank you very, very, very much always to the Manitowoc Public Library. I love working with them. They're a fantastic resource in our community. And this wraps up our series of yoga for the last 3 months. Like I mentioned, all of those previous classes are online, but I would say keep a weather eye on the horizon for me because, like I mentioned, we do have some fun things in the works for later this year. So be well, take care of yourselves, and I will see you when I see you. Bye.